Hi there, I'm Corin Wakefield and this is Westlake Crash Course World History. And today we're going to talk about English land claims in America. In 1607, the year the English ended their long journey to America, they set up their first colony in Jamestown. In Jamestown, they set up an Anglican church and a Protestant Episcopal church. Before any of this Jamestown stuff happened, Spain and England fought for control over the Americas. Luckily, England won. Point England. Moving on, over the years, many more Anglican churches and Episcopal Protestant churches were set up. Obviously, there were many religious continuities and changes after England settled in America. Oh, hi, I didn't see you there. I was just reading my favorite book, World History. In 1631, Roger Williams established a Baptist church in America. The Puritans that had come over to England decided that the best form of government would be to be found if they were to set up an early church. So they set up their government around their faith. But wait, old version of me, isn't there such a thing as separation from the church and state? Oh, younger version of me, how weird and obnoxious I once was. The idea of church and state wasn't established until the ratification of the First Amendment, but that's a different episode. Many positive aspects had come out of their decision for self-government. However, there was one problem: the right to vote. Those who could vote had to be a good standing member of the church, so because only 1,700 of the 15,000 white population of Massachusetts had become citizens, and since then people had died and left the colony, of that 1,700, only about 1 in 20 people had the ability to vote. Roman Catholics were subject to Protestant discrimination, so the Toleration Act was set up in 1649. This act ensured that no Christian religions were to be persecuted. There's been some controversy over whether this violates the First Amendment, but I'll leave that up to you to think about. Let's head to the thought bubble. William Penn was a Quaker who founded the Pennsylvania colony. No, I'm not talking about the oatmeal brand. Quaker is a member of a Christian movement called the Religious Society of Friends that resort to peaceful tactics. Penn signed a treaty with the Indians in 1683. He became friends with the Indians that lived locally in Pennsylvania and made sure they were paid well for their lands. He also learned several dialects of the Indians so he could make negotiations easier. That's the secret compartment. A broom? Really? Oh, I see. Salem witch trials were a period of time where people could be arrested for the accusation of witchcraft. Pretty crazy, actually. You see someone the next day, poof, they're gone because of the accusation of witchcraft. Unintended. Get it? Like magic? Witchcraft? No? Okay, moving on. Years of political turmoil in Britain culminated with the Glorious Revolution of 1688 to 89 that deposed the king, James II, and led to the limits on the monarchy and greater freedoms for the people. The American colonies benefited from these changes. Colonial assemblies passed measures that limited the power of the royal governors and expanded their own power. Britain's 13 North American colonies matured during the 1700s. They grew in population, economic strength, and cultural attainment. The war between Britain and France in the 1750s was fought partly in North America. Britain was victorious and soon initiated policies designed to control and fund its vast empire. These measures imposed greater restraints on the American colonists' way of life. I have to leave, but here's my assistant, Miss Matulis.
Now for the economic aspects. Colonial America started out using mercantilism, and the colonies existed as a market for the home country's goods and a supplier of raw materials. All trade with other countries had to go through the home country, and all trade had to be on English or colonial ships. Some Americans viewed the mercantilist law as excessive, and so they were often ignored. James II responded to this by removing New England's charter in 1688, and he established the Dominion of New England. This was a royal province that outlawed town meetings and ignored previous land grants. In that same year of 1688, during the Glorious Revolution, James II's daughter Mary and her husband William were enthroned. Two treatises on government by John Locke argued that power flows from the consent of the governed, not from God, and he also argued that citizens have inalienable natural rights, which are life, liberty, and property. In Massachusetts, Maryland, and New York, people were concerned about the right of voluntary allegiance to the crown and self-government, so naturally, there were revolts. There were 4 major regions of America in this time. There was the Plantation South, the Middle Colonies, New England, and the Frontier. The plantation south had wide coastal plains, wide rivers, and very rich soil that was well suited for tobacco farming. Only children of planters were educated, and higher education was only for those who could afford it. Plantation owners were the leading forces in this region. Next we have the, you guessed it, middle colonies. This was the major farming and manufacturing sector of America. There were many immigrants in this region, and there were 3 large rivers that flowed from north to south and that served as trade routes. Next we have the region of New England. It had rocky soil and rapid rivers. 95% of the population here was made up of English immigrants, mostly from villages. Occupations here consisted of farming, fishing, and commerce. The last region I'm going to cover today is the frontier, or the back country. Exhausted soil there encouraged westward movement. This way. The residents here had a great spirit about democracy and placed an emphasis on individual freedom. Now you know about the colonial region in America, what up? On May 14, 1607, the first permanent English settlement in North America was established on the banks of the James River. This is known as Jamestown, Virginia. Famine, disease, and conflict with local Native American tribes in the first 2 years put Jamestown on the verge of failure. What saved it was an arrival of settlers and supplies in 1610. Tobacco became Virginia's first profitable export. A period of peace came between the English and the Native Americans when a colonist, John Rolfe, married the daughter of a chief, Pocahontas. Jamestown continually expanded, and it remained to be the Virginia capital until the year of 1699. In September 1620, 100 English men and women set sail for the New World among the ship called the Mayflower. In late December of that same year, it anchored at Plymouth Rock. This is where they formed the first permanent settlement of Europeans in New England. Although more than half of the original settlers died past that first grueling winter, the survivors were able to make peace treaties with the Native Americans and were able to make a largely self-sufficient economy in less than 5 years. Now for some important events that affected American history. The French and Indian War, also known as the 7 Years' War, lasted from 1756 to 1763. At the Peace Conference in 1763, British claimed Canada and Florida. However, they gave Louisiana to Spain and allowed France to keep their West Indian sugar islands. This greatly strengthened the American colonies because it removed the European rivals from the north and from the south, and it also opened up the Mississippi Valley for westward expansion. In 1763, at the end of the French and Indian War, the British issued a proclamation. The main idea of this proclamation was to make the Indians less mad at the British by checking the encroachment of settlers on their lands. This has remained one of the cornerstones of Native American law in the United States, even to this day. The next event is the Boston Massacre. The Boston Massacre occurred on March 5, 1770. A small group of Boston colonists began to taunt and throw snowballs at British military troops. They did this because the government imposed many new taxes on many items that left them outraged. In response to this, the British military troops opened fire on the Bostonians, killing 4 of them. This event became referred to as the Boston Massacre. The many events that occurred in the British Empire of the New World have shaped and influenced the way that America works and is to this day.